the reason you're attracting people who take from you, that are selfish, that are narcissistic, the reason is... Hey everyone, Cheryl here. Welcome back to my YouTube machine. We have a very meaty topic for you this week, and it's all about why it is that we attract narcissistic partners and how to stop dating those narcissistic people. Before we dig in, I just want to approach the elephant in the room, bring the elephant to the room, talk about it. So this topic is a really sensitive one, and I know that from the responses and reactions I've got to previous content, videos and posts on narcissism. So I know that it's something that evokes a really strong emotional response in a lot of us, and I understand that, but I'm also still going to be myself and still going to be direct and still give it to you straight. I'm also going to explain what it is we're talking about and what it is we're not talking about, because that's really, really important. So narcissism itself is on a spectrum. And over here we have people who have full-blown, diagnosable narcissistic personality disorder. And you don't need to know psychology to be able to spot these people because it's obvious. So that's on this side of the spectrum. Over here, we have people who have narcissistic traits, people that are pretty self-absorbed, self-centered, and they do think the world revolves around them, but it's not diagnosable. It's more like traits that are there, but it's not pathological. And those types of people, this is a very unpopular opinion, one of many to come, those types of people who have these traits of being quite selfish, those people can change. Those people can change. I've seen it in my own life. People who I saw as having very narcissistic traits to people becoming very compassionate and very understanding and really thoughtful and generous. So those are the people over here. But the people over here who have the full-blown personality disorder, they're not getting better, they're not changing. And also, we're not talking about those people today. So if you're over here and you're like, this person is a narcissist, they have narcissistic personality disorder, shortened to NPD. If that's where you're at, this is not the video for you, and I am not the expert for you. You need someone else that deals with the personality disorder part of this. So what we're going to deal with is somewhere towards the middle of the spectrum and the end, these narcissistic traits and why it is we attract those kinds of romantic partners and friends and colleagues and neighbours and all these kinds of people. Earlier on this week, I actually put a message out on my Instagram stories, and I asked my beautiful community there about this very topic and asked them to share. And we did have a couple comments and observations come through. And one of them was from a really, really beautiful soul who's in one of my courses in Infinite Love. And she said, you know, honestly, sometimes it feels easier to just blame the other person and talk about how awful he is instead of actually looking at my part in this. Now, I'm paraphrasing, they're not the exact words, but she said that, and I thought, you know what, I really commend that and really respect that, and that's really, really courageous and really brave to say that. And I really agree with a lot of that. It does feel easier to blame the other person, because these types of people who have these really narcissistic traits, they're fairly awful. They're fairly awful to be around. The people that are on the really extreme end and they have the full-blown personality disorder, awful, awful, awful people, right? We can all agree on that. But even on this end of the scale, the people who are really selfish and self-absorbed, when you're someone who's really sensitive, really empathic, someone who feels a lot and who wants to help and wants to give, it's very draining and very difficult to be around people that want to take all the time. But here's the thing. As that really beautiful soul so bravely shared, it's because it feels easier to blame the other person that we're not shifting, we're not changing. And so there is a point when we need to shift from blaming and go to personal responsibility. Now, personal responsibility is very, very different from blaming, which is why we're not talking about the people over here who have the personality disorder who are abusive. We're not talking about abuse. We're talking about this pattern of attracting people who are very self-absorbed, who ultimately don't want us to have our needs met. And we're going to come to that in a second, because that's really, really the crux of this, right? So when we start to take personal responsibility, we look at this and we say, you know what? This isn't the first time that I've dated someone who's really fucking selfish. This isn't the first time that I've been over giving in a relationship. This isn't the first time I felt invisible or felt drained or resentful at the amount that I'm giving this person. It isn't the first time I've dated someone that's really fucking entitled. And when we can admit that to ourselves, as I had to many years ago, and we start to look at why that is, then we really start to gain power over it. It's worth noting that there is this myth flying around. In fact, this myth is now in meme form, and we know how much I love a meme. I don't know if you do know how much I love a meme, but it's right there with cats and Beyonce for me. Love it. Love a meme. However, there's memes out there about narcissism and being an empath, like, 5 reasons why empaths attract narcissists. I really want to debunk this. And again, we're not talking about the personality disorder, which I believe actually is only a very small part of the equation. The stats say it's 1% of people, still pretty high. I'm going to say something that might shake you to your core. You don't attract narcissistic people because you're an empath. You attract narcissistic people because you're codependent. Narcissistic people are looking for easy prey, right? Just like in the animal kingdom, a cheetah, a lion will look for a gazelle that's got a bad leg, will look for the animal that can't run away. Narcissistic people are very predatory in their behavior, and they look for easy prey. So they look for people who have low self-esteem, weak boundaries, people that ultimately are going to be very easy for them to use. And as horrible as that is, when we can start to take care of our low self-esteem and our poor boundaries, of which I struggle with for many years, when we start to do that healing work and really address that, we don't attract those kinds of people anymore. Or if they do show up in our lives, we don't have any time for them. We're not an easy target anymore. We're not easy prey. Let's look at a model called high obligation versus high entitlement. This is actually a model that my very first therapist designed. He was this really old, wise man he had like grey hair and a grey beard, and he used to do this and sit here and be very thoughtful. One of the most profound, wise human beings I've ever encountered, even to this day. He was incredible. And he designed this model called, it was the entitlement and obligation model, and it was like a cross chart thing. And there was like high entitlement and high obligation were at opposite ends, and then there was like low entitlement, low obligation. We're just going to focus on these 2 quadrants though. High obligation and high entitlement. What does that mean? High obligation people are the ones that feel obligated, obliged, feel like it's their job to give and give and give and give. High entitlement people are the ones who feel like they are well within their rights. They are entitled to take and take and take and take. Why do you think it is that these 2 types of people attract one another? Because it meets a need in both of them. I'm going to say that again, because it meets a need in both of them. The high entitlement person is saying, what have you done for me lately? And the high obligation person is saying, oh, what can I do for you? And it's like this really toxic, magnetic pull that these 2 types of people have towards each other. And I see this playing out all the time in relationship dynamics, just that I observe as I'm going through life. And it's really interesting. Now, here's the thing. We can't change the other person. We know how hard it is to change ourselves. And so we're not going to focus on the other person. Is it wrong that they take all the time and they're really selfish and they don't give to anyone? Yeah, that's wrong and that's awful. But guess what? That's their lesson and their karma. We can't fix that, and we're certainly not going to fix it by giving and giving and giving. We fix it. We fix our side of it. We clean up our side of the emotional street by looking at why we feel obligated to give to everyone all the time. Is giving to everyone a way of escaping our own needs? Just think on that for a second. Are you giving to people all the time because it feels easier than actually stopping and asking yourself, what do I need right now? Is it easier to give to someone and answer their request than actually use your voice and say, hey, here's what I need? And there's ways of saying it, and perhaps that's another topic for another video, how to articulate your needs and how to get your needs met with ease. But really, it's not even about the strategy. It's not about saying the perfect sentences. And I'm sure, you know, you're smart. You've probably read up on boundaries and all of that. And you're given these really clunky sentences to say to people to get them to meet your needs. I prefer to tackle it from the other side of it though, from the other angle. You can say the perfect sentence about expressing a boundary or a need, but if you don't believe you're worthy of having your needs met, the perfect sentence isn't going to mean shit because you're not going to believe it. And when you know you're worthy of having your needs met, which you are, we all are, no one's more worthy of having their needs met than anyone else. We're all worthy of having our needs met. And when you really know that, and it really sinks in and it gets really embodied into every cell of your being, and you know that of course your needs are going to be met, then guess what? Not only do the words come easily when you need to articulate a need or draw a boundary, the words come so easily, but also you find yourself not really having to use those words very often because those kinds of people don't even approach you because you're not the gazelle with the bad leg anymore. You're not easy prey. And it's in our presence, it's in the way we stand, it's in the way we speak, it is just there. It's just there. It's the way we show up and people feel it. They feel it. You know how you know something about someone and you don't know how you know it? It's kind of like that. People kind of know when your boundaries are sort of a guideline and they can move and push. I personally don't have anyone in my life taking from me anymore. I don't ever, let me catch myself, not saying I don't ever have it. Very rarely, very, very, very rarely do I have a moment where I feel like I'm overgiving. Whenever that feeling creeps back up again, I stop and I ask myself, am I overgiving? And if so, what do I need now? What do I need to do? What do I need to give to myself? And I also ask myself, how did this start to happen? What was the catalyst? Now that we know all of this theory, what are we meant to do with all of this? How are we meant to implement it? What are we meant to do with this information? So the crux of this, which I mentioned at the start of the video, the real important nugget I want you to take away from this is the reason you're attracting people who take from you, that are selfish, that are narcissistic. The reason is you're in this pattern of overgiving. Now, a lot of the time I would call that codependency, but what you really need to know is it's a pattern of overgiving. It's a pattern of not having your needs met. And so the way that we fix this, the way that we really get to the bottom of what's going on is to do some really deep inner work as to how this took hold. So you can journal on the following. How is the pattern of overgiving familiar to me? Where did this pattern start? What was my role within my family when I was younger? What was my relationship like with my mum? What was my relationship like with my dad? What was my relationship like with my siblings? Journal on all of that. And what we're really looking for here is some kind of indicator of where this pattern of overgiving started. So we've mentioned this before, but if you had a parent who was in need of a lot of care, whether that was because they had poor physical health or really struggled with their mental health, or maybe they were just someone that was really, really needy, was in a lot of pain, was very traumatized, hadn't really done a lot of the inner work themselves, and they often needed you to do things as a kid. You would do a lot for them. And when you did that, they would say, "You're such a good girl. I love you so much. Thank you so much for helping me." And what we started to do was build this esteem, this really good feeling around giving. The flip side of this is what we might have experienced when we didn't give. If we didn't give to that parent when they expected it, or that sibling, or that whomever, it can also be teachers, by the way, and other people in your life, but it's usually your family. If we didn't give to them, what happened? Did they go really quiet? Right? Did they stonewall us? Were we scolded? Were we punished if we didn't give them what it was they asked for? And so not only have we built then this connection between being loved and giving, we've also developed this real fear around not giving. If you don't give, then the person that you love is going to withdraw from you. That's really deep and that's really painful. So what we need to do, instead of really focusing on the person that you're dating now who takes a lot from you, focus on where that started. Go back to your family. Go back to, when I say go back to your family, I don't necessarily mean talk to them. I mean, go back to it in your journal, right? Journal on it. Journal out those questions that I talked about and actually do the journaling. You can just skip over this video and, you know, move on with your life. But if you actually do the journaling prompts, it will really help you to make that connection and see where it was that you started to overgive. When you do this work, you really build up this esteem and this feeling of being really centered in who you are, knowing you don't have to overgive to anyone, knowing that you're an adult now and you can say no to people. Incidentally, we want to say no in a way that is strong but really balanced. When we start to get really aggressive with it, that tends to escalate a situation and it doesn't get the result that we were hoping for. Now, most people are quite reasonable, and if you say no to a request, they should understand. If they don't, again, that's their work, that's up to them. You don't have to then go back on your boundary and go, oh my God, yes, I will do this thing for you, because you're scared and it's making you feel uncomfortable. This also is a really strongly ingrained neural pathway as well. It's like as soon as someone asks you for something, your response is yes, 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 let me go do that. A little bit like when we've been driving for years and years and years, it becomes a really learned response. We know what to do when we need to stop. We know what we do when we need to turn. We almost don't have to think about it. It's similar when we're responding to people's requests for help, people asking us to do something. It's almost this reflex that we're not even thinking about, and the word yes has escaped our lips before we've even considered if that's something we really, really want to do. So it is a retraining exercise too, but what I'd really love you to focus on today is where this came from. There is an inner child meditation floating around somewhere on this channel, I'm sure. If there isn't, I'll make one at some point, and if not, you can just Google inner child meditation, and I'm sure there's some really, really beautiful ones right here on the YouTube machine. And it is really about soothing that inner child and letting her or him know that he or she is absolutely loved, and that love is unconditional. And even if you learn conditional love in your family, know that the love that you have for yourself and your inner child is unconditional, and they're always safe, and you don't have to give if you don't want to. And like I said, when you do this work, you become different, you become changed, and you no longer attract those narcissistic people. And let me tell you, after years of struggling with this, it is really a breath of fresh air, and it feels so good to know that the people that are in my life now, that are around me, really want to help and want to support me, and I really want to help and support them, and they don't really have to ask even. It's just this flow of support, of giving and receiving, not over giving and taking. So I hope you learned a lot from this message, and I really hope it empowered you to take some practical steps in preventing these really selfish people from entering into your life in either a romantic capacity or in any other way. If you did enjoy the video, do let me know in the comments down below what you took away from it. That really, really helps me to understand what you learn, and it really encourages me to keep making more videos. And of course, do hit the like button and do subscribe if you want to be notified when I put out new videos. They are out every Tuesday. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next week.